I'm just gonna.
All right, folks, it's 9 o'clock. We'll call the May regular meeting of the CFPUA board to order. The first thing we need to do is determine quorum. I need to excuse Jennifer Adams, Jonathan Barfield, Charlie Rivenbark, and Rob Zappel. Need a motion?
Move to excuse. Second.
All in favor?
Charlie's on the way.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
All right, adoption of the agenda. Got a few changes. First, I'd like to make a motion to amend, to move the FY25 budget adoption to the Finance Committee because it's in the Finance Committee recommendation. And the second amendment would be to accept the walk-in item for emergency repair of critical infrastructure and place under the Executive Director's report. We need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And now we have the presentation.
This is where we would like you to read a resolution for a friend of ours.
Mr. Norris,
Yes, sir.
will you stand up here?
Yeah, you have to stand.
All right. Whereas the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority is a body politic organized in July 2007 by the city of Wilmington in New Hanover County, North Carolina, to operate the water and sewer utilities of the city and county. Whereas William Bill Norris was approved by the Wilmington City Council to serve on the CFPUA Board of Directors in September of 2013, and whereas Mr. Norris has served continuously as an authority member since that time, and whereas during his tenure as an authority member, Mr. Norris has served as chairman, vice chairman, and treasurer, and has served as chairman of the Finance Committee, and has served on the Executive, Human Resources, and Communications Committees, and whereas Mr. Norris' professional standing and expertise in the county and finance have instilled confidence in other board members, enhanced CFPUA's fiscal responsibility, maintained an excellent bond rating, and supported rehabilitation of existing infrastructure and organized growth of the city, growth of the utility system, and whereas it is the authority's intent to recognize Mr. Norris's dedication to the authority and the region's citizens in support of CFPUA's founding principles and mission statement as a steward of vital community resources, his service as a corporate officer, and in guiding board committees, his service as a steward of CFPUA's finances, and his unwavering support of employees. Now therefore, the board and staff do formally recognize and thank William Norris for his exemplary service as a member of the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority. Adopted this, the 8th day of May, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now is the portion of our public comment. Do we have anything? Sorry.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes, both of our last meeting,
Oh, I'm
April
sorry.
10th, that's okay. And we have the special budget minutes from the 16th as well. Unless there's discussion, I would move to approve those.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I was getting ahead of myself. I apologize for that.
I forgot to.
All right, now, public comments.
We don't have any.
All right, now we move on to the FY25 budget hearing. We need we're going to do a budget presentation.
Good morning, members of the board. Ben Guerreri with the Finance Department, Procurement and Budget Manager. The budget that is attached, this morning what we're requesting is approval of the budget ordinances, which are attached In the budget ordinance is outlined the appropriations and revenue for the operating budget, as well as the first year of the 10-year CIP. Just wanted to make you aware of that. Additionally, this item will approve the FY25 rate and fee schedule, the changes to it, which are also attached to the item before you in your packet. With that, I'll roll that in. Right here is a summary of the appropriations and the estimated revenues for your FY25 budget. As discussed, nothing has changed since our budget workshop in April 16th. Total appropriations are $119,997,130 for a 6.3% increase. The revenues are commensurate with the appropriations. In this budget, we have a $2.1 million increase for salary benefits. This is a 6% combined market and merit increase, as well as some adjustments based on market analysis. Just a reminder, there are 2 new positions included in this budget. One is a lab supervisor and one is a utility locator. On the operating side, it's a $6 million increase, or 19.3%. This is driven mainly by PFAS and the cost to treat PFAS. And additionally, we have the locator contract, that placeholder that's in there, which will be brought to the board when the contract is ready. It's currently out for bid right now. On the revenue side, we have the SDC changes. The FY25 combined SDC is $5,735, which is $175 more than FY24. And as you'll remember, this the revenue side in this budget is put together with the direction we received from the board for a 4.6% rate increase, which is about $3.37 increase to the average residential monthly bill. That's a combined bill. And you can see the percent increases for water fixed and sewer fixed and volumetric, respectively. And with that, we will open it up for the board for any questions or comments. Happy to answer anything.
We need the public hearing part.
Oh, sorry.
Mr.
Do you need a motion to open the public hearing?
You need to open it, then we have comments, and then a motion.
A motion to open the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
We don't have anybody.
All right.
Motion to close.
Motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank
All
you.
right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so rather than approving the budget today, I have some items I think are appropriate for discussion, but may result in some changes to the budget, and some of them affect the strategic plan. So I know
Yeah, we moved the budget,
We did
we
move
moved
that.
discussion to the finance committee, so we're gonna
Okay.
sail on through this other stuff and
I
get
came in
to.
a little hot this morning.
All right, so, the next thing on our item is the, approval of the consent agenda. We have 4 items. Need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, administrative reports, attorney
So-
report.
I have one item to report. During our last meeting, there was a question as to whether it was lawful to cap backflow prevention device testing fees. According to the North Carolina State Constitution, specifically Article 1, and the cases of being versus the town of Chapel Hill and Wendell properties, a local government cannot put a cap as to what they charge for their labor. So no, we cannot put a cap as to companies, small businesses, what they can charge to test backflow prevention devices. Other than that, I do have some items for closed session. That is the consent of mine.
Next on the agenda, executive director's report.
Yes, so we have our 4 printed items, which we would like to go through. Then we have added a walk-on item, which is the emergency repair of existing equipment. And then finally, I would like to share some information. So let's start with the first 4 items. We have the key indicators report, the safety report, the environmental report, and our strategic plan update. Staff stands ready to discuss any of those items.
I have a question. With regards to the strategic plan update, and I sat through some other members of the board, and I'm glad we did move the budget because I do have some items of discussion. I think it would be appropriate to have Chairman Adams here and Commissioner Zeppel and Barfield. They likely will have some thoughts on this as well. Will affect the budget. But I sat through the IEB training that was that 2 weeks ago, Ken? Well, I was here for about 15, 20 minutes, and frankly, felt it was an insulting waste of my time, the time of the other board members. I have the ability as a board member to leave early and not to go through with the rest of the training, which I did, and I believe some other members did as well. But our staff members will not. I have concerns as a board member that this DEI or IEB, and I'd like to get to the point of why we renamed it IEB rather than DEI and have some conversation on that. But I think we are at risk of adversely affecting employee morale with this initiative and ultimately employee retention. And we've seen issues with employee retention start to bubble up. And I think it is appropriate for this board to discuss why that might be happening. I have concerns including continuing to include this initiative in our strategic plan. A lot of much larger organizations are discussing removing similar initiatives from their strategic plans statewide. Ultimately, I think there are there are small budget results if we were to remove it, but larger than that, it speaks to the employee morale and running this organization efficiently and effectively. So I'm not making any, I think that I would like to open up for discussion and ultimately would like to remove it from our strategic plan. I'm not going to make any such motion today because we do not have a full board, and I think that out of respect for the folks who may disagree with me on this, I'd like to wait until we did.
So I wanted to share, I really appreciate Luke reaching out and sharing these concerns. And I recognize that what we have here is we have a link between policy issue and budgetary issues. And yesterday, staff looked at this closely, and we think that we can help you decouple that to some extent if you want to take advantage of that. So we have an outside contract that is being paid for in both this year's budget, which is FY24, and there's funds reserved for additional services from that outside contract in FY25. So the contract amount that we have now is $126,875 is what I recall. We'll expend most of that this year. Some of it will roll over into next year in the first month or two. And if I recall correctly, we have approximately $67,000 in stage 2. What we can offer to you as staff, so you can decouple this issue from the budget, is we can offer to remove that $67,000 from the budget and then give the board the option to continue those services with in-house resources or not at a later policy discussion around the strategic plan. So recognize that the expenditure and the policy issue are intertwined. We give you an opportunity, if you want to take advantage of it, of breaking that up. Reduce the budget ordinance by $67,000 and then take up the policy issue at your August committee meetings to see if you want to continue with that strategic plan initiative with existing resources.
Mr. Chairman, if I have an observation and a question. So Mr. Waddell admits he left, I think, I don't know, it was about a quarter of the way through the presentation. And I know that if I'd left a quarter of the way through med school, I wouldn't have been a very good professional. If Mr. Waddell had left a quarter of the way through his training at the Citadel, I'm not sure he would have had the benefits of what the experts that are there meant to show. I thought it was a strange move, but my question is, your concerns seem to be that you think that it's going to affect morale and retention in a negative way. And we know from mountains and actually decades of research that sensitivity training is actually improves morale and detention. So I'm interested if you have information about those two claims, if you can provide any evidence.
So, this discussion seems to be going deep into personnel issues and personnel
Well,
matters.
I want to respond to the comments that he raised, so I think that is
But I think
appropriate.
have a significant discussion. I think we need to, we made
Need to go into.
this available for closed session again, so I
I
think.
disagree with that. I don't think this is something personnel, I think this is just policy about the
Yeah.
strategic plan.
Agreed. And I don't intend to litigate it back and forth here. If I did, I would make a motion to remove it from the strategic plan today, and I think would be successful in that. So, but I did think it was, I do think it's respectful to some colleagues who may share your views of why we need IEB or DEI. I consider them the same thing and exactly the same. I have not heard yet why we changed the name from DEI to IEB when they are effectively the exact same policy. I did ask that question specifically and would like an answer to that. But I, like all the other board members here, am busy. I own my own business. I have a young family. I'm duly elected to represent the city of Wilmington. I made an effort to come here and listen to this, but instead I spent 20 minutes standing on postcards of my feelings. If I was a busy employee that was mandated to be here, I'd be furious and I'd be looking for another job. And I'm worried that that's happening. And I think it's, I do have the floor, Dr. Cannon. I think it's important to have that discussion, and I think our board should have that discussion, and that's why I'm bringing it up. Do I find it comfortable to have that discussion? No, I don't. But I know how I did feel in that meeting, and I believe that there's a lot of our folks who work here that are going to be mandated to go to these very same meetings that we attended, and I don't think it makes for an efficiently run organization. I think it's insulting to them, as I found it insulting to me, and felt that that was appropriate to bring forward for discussion only at this meeting. If we want to take some action at a later time, I'm happy to do that. But to my original question, Mr. Waltrip, I'd like to know when the nomenclature changed from DEI to IEB. Perhaps I missed that meeting.
Well, that was a decision made in my office. So when we were negotiating contract terms, it was my opinion, and my opinion alone, that the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion had become somewhat controversial in the broader context outside of this organization. But I believe the board's intent was to ensure that we were creating a good culture where individuals felt included, that we were demonstrating that we were being equitable in all of our policies and procedures, and that people felt like they were belonging and were belonging to our organization. So when we shared that in the workshop, we recognized that, yes, we were offering a modification of the original concept, and we're looking for feedback from board members. I didn't hear any negative feedback from the modification.
If I was to make any action or try to pose something out there today, I think we should call it what it is. If it's DEI, it's DEI. Let's call it that. And if the full board wants to, if a majority of the board wants to keep it in the strategic plan, it should be called what it is. It's DEI. So I don't want to hold up more of this board meeting. I'm actually supposed to get out of town for one vacation a year with my family later today. But if there's other discussion that can be had, but I felt it necessary to bring it up today.
So there's two options. This is your budget and your policy and your strategic plan. One option is to delay adoption of the budget. You have, your next meeting is, we've reserved time on the 23rd of this month. And between now and then, we can have conversations about the budget and its relationship to policy. What we offer you as staff is an opportunity to decouple the expenditure that we put in the budget for outside resources from the policy discussion, so that you can move forward with the other 99.95% of the budget. And then we will commit to you as staff that, that we will start a series of committee meetings around this strategic plan initiative that will roll up to a discussion at your meeting in August. And we're proposing that we cancel the meeting in July, but if you feel like this is important enough that we need to have those series of meetings in July, we'll do that too. But we think this is a reasonable compromise by decoupling the decision of the budget and its expenditure from this particular policy issue.
I'll make this quick, but I think that to tie this together, I mean, you know, I've been fortunate, and not getting personal, I've been fortunate to work with a lot of really good staff over the years here. And this is a little bit of unprecedented time, I think, with staff and how critical that staff is. And I think that we as a board, our decisions should be not just based on even policy outside. We need to focus on retaining and investing in these people. And I think one of the things, like, and I'll admit I had to leave early from the workshop as well, but I mean, there's a lot of people putting in a lot of hours outside their normal day. And I think that all those hours need to be productive and efficient. And I think that we need to make sure that there is no negative effects of anything that we decide to do on those employees. And I think that's the relevant, concern to this. Because I mean, we all know the factors that are playing into those things that are going on. I think we have to be super sensitive to it and make sure we're making the right decisions on behalf of those people that are affected, one way or another.
Well, I do have a comment to make, but I agree with Nicolette. What I'm getting ready to say is more of a personnel issue, and I will defer until we go into closed session, because the genesis of this whole thing started with one incident, and it was handled poorly. And that was what caused it to get into where we are today. And I want to discuss that, but I'll do it at appropriate time.
So we'll continue this in closed session at the end.
Are we going to do that at the end of the meeting, or are we going to do it right
Yeah, we
now?
have-
We can do it right now if you want, or at the end.
I mean, we have a closed session at the end of the meeting, and we can run through the rest of this
Okay.
and deal with it at the end. That was kind of my hope. All right, on executive director report, do we need a motion for the
Yes.
the walk-in item?
Yes, so the next, are there any other questions around any of the other reports or aspects? Hearing none. Then we have a walk-in item that I'd like to ask Matt Tribbett to come up and discuss. You should have a copy of that walk-in item in front of you. If you don't, I'll ask Donna to see if we have any additional copies that we can share. Matt?
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Board. I am presenting our walk-in item, which is requesting authorization for our executive director to execute a $88,280 sole source purchase with Xylem Water Solutions for repair to a pump at Pump Station 89. Pump Station 89 is our largest wastewater pump station in the collection system in terms of both total volume and number of customers that it serves. It uses 485 horsepower pumps to pump more than 4 million gallons a day of wastewater. This one of the 4 pumps that failed was the week before last. It failed after 25 years of service, which is a good long life for a wastewater pump, exceeding the typical life expectancy of around 10 to 15 years. Because of the criticality of these pumps, we do keep a spare in inventory. So commendment to our crew who has already installed the spare seamlessly without any disruption to service. So this purchase would be to rebuild that pump that failed, so it can be put back into inventory to replace the spare that we just recently put into service. The station uses 4 matching flight pumps. Xylem is the sole provider of flight pump systems in North Carolina, which is why we need to request the sole source authorization. The total value of the repair of the purchase is $88,280, but the vast majority of that is the parts. Around $80,000 is parts, with about $5,000 for labor and $3,700 for freight. That's all I have. If there are any questions? Yes, sir.
Just one, is the spare that's being gone aboard, is it new or is it rebuilt?
That is a good question, and that, let's see here, is a rebuild. And we have had success with rebuilds before. We have flight pumps at other stations. We did look at full replacement. The price was around $140,000. So we feel that for the lower price, we'll get a good long life out of the rebuild pump.
And it also mentions that the pumps are to be matching, the rebuilds and everything all matches.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So if the rebuild for 88,000 is comparable to the new one for 140, what is the life expectancy of the rebuild one?
We believe.
And is it, and the time period that we're talking about between the rebuilt one and possibly it failing and the new one, which we know won't fail, is that what we're looking for as an authority for future references?
Yes, we believe that we will get a similar life expectancy out of the rebuild pump. We get a great warranty, and part of that is because we're going directly to the manufacturer's licensed representative for the parts and the repair. We get, the warranty varies on different components of the pump, but up to 7 years on some of the parts, with 1 year on everything, labor included. So we did feel that we will get a better life cycle cost out of the rebuild as opposed to buying a new replacement.
Mr. Chair, so what we're looking for, at best 7 years out of the rebuild pump, and then the warranty is for how much? For how long?
The warranty is for 7 years, but in our experience, it varies. You know, wastewater is a tough environment on any mechanical or electrical components. But we're hoping for a life, and it depends on what source you look at, but life expectancies can range from 7 to 10 years to 10 to 15 years. But we already operate some rebuilt pumps that are approaching that 15-year mark, 12 to 15 years. So we feel good about that. And we make those decisions case by case. Every time we're looking at a pump failure, we compare what is the cost of a rebuild to what is the cost of a replacement, and weigh those, we consider those. And the estimate that we got is based on worst case scenario. Everything inside that pump and motor need to be replaced. We may find that there are reusable parts which may reduce the price of the repair.
What about, I know over Lower Cape Fear with pump replacements, and we find that some of our stuff is, had so many birthdays, we can't get parts anymore. So they're trying to stock some of that stuff. Is that also the case here, sir?
We do keep a good inventory, especially for our older with replacement parts. There are not a lot of serviceable parts on this type of pump. This is it's a dry pit, but it is a submersible pump, which means if it gets pulled apart, it needs to go to the factory for service. But that is something that we pay attention to, is the availability of spare parts to fend off a replacement if there are serviceable
How do
parts.
you pronounce the name of that pump? F-L-Y-G-T.
Flight, and that's made in Sweden.
They made it hard, didn't they?
So I think this is the best business decision and seek your support because it is sole source.
Motion to approve.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Committee reports.
And if I might, I do have one other thing to mention. Why don't we, I was going to move that we cancel a series of meetings in July, but I'm thinking that it might be best to take that up after the closed session, to see if the conversation leads the board to decide whether it wants to cancel its July meeting or not. But I would like, with your permission, to defer this item to after closed session, and if the conversation supports canceling the July meeting, that is staff's recommendation. Thank you.
No.
No, we'll just
All right.
move it.
Committee reports, the executive committee, regular meeting was May 1st. What am I looking for? The minutes are in your packet. Long-range planning committee. Long-range planning committee met April 25th. The first item, we are looking for a recommendation from the board for the 2025 and 10-year CIP. Girl?
Good morning. We're seeking today approval of the fiscal year 2025 and the 10-year CIP plan. This information was presented at the CIP workshop back in March. No changes have been requested since that meeting, so the CIP is essentially the same as was presented in March. We discussed this at Long Range Planning last week, and the Long Range Planning Committee voted to present it to the full board for approval. So I have a brief presentation. I think most of it will look very similar to what you had seen before, but just to refresh everybody's mind on what the CIP looks like before we ask for a vote. This is a summary of the fiscal year 2025 CIP, kind of what are the major items in it and the drivers. It is important to note that last year we had projected it to be $267 million, and what we are proposing today is $328 million that will be invested over many years. That's the budget. It will be spent over many years. And then I listed the cost drivers below that on what kind of costs that increase. Most of that is outside funding from New Hanover County for water and sewer mains to the northern part of the county, roughly $35 million, and an $18 million grant from the state to extend water mains for PFAS-contaminated private wells. We had several new programs that are listed down below, as well as we accounted for construction inflation. These are the top 10 projects by value in the fiscal year 2025. These 10 projects make up about 95% of the fiscal year 2025 CIP. Most notable is the first item, which is the Southside wastewater treatment plant project. This is the first year that the construction funding is in the capital program for approval. And then the remaining items are pretty much the same items that are the major drivers that were on the previous slide. But again, these 10 projects make up 95% of the requested 2025 capital improvement plan. For a sense of scale, this shows the CIP requested for fiscal year 25 compared to prior years. Again, it's substantially larger, but that's the budgeted amount that will not be spent all in one year. I also like to note that in the orange bar, that is the Southside project, but I like to note that we have already obtained $70 million in outside funding for that through the state SRF program, and earlier this month we applied for another $35 million for additional outside funding, and hope to hear about that later this summer. There was a request after the budget workshop for us to look at spending of the CIP. So we budget a certain amount, but then we spend it over, usually a typical capital project takes 3 to 5 years to spend the entire funding. So we did a spending projection of the entire CIP. Here's not shown all the projects. We color-coded the major categories, with the blue being Southside, the reddish or brownish color was the funding from New Hanover County for their water and sewer projects. And then we have grant-funded projects, SRF-funded projects, bond-funded projects, and in orange are PAYGO. So this is for 3 years. The takeaway is, for example, in the first year, the first 4 bars, first 4 quarters, that is roughly about $126 million versus the budget being $328 million. So you can kind of see that, yeah, the budget is very large, but we don't spend all that in 1 year. That gets spent over many years. This shows the spending by category for over the next 3 years. The takeaway is in the orange is our PAYGO funding, which is roughly about 19%. The blue is Southside, which is about 39%, and then everything else is from these other funding sources, whether it's bonds, grants, SRF, or New Hanover County funding. And then real quick for the 10-year CIP, instead of looking backwards how it compares, looking forward how it compares. Again, a very large expenditure budgeted in fiscal year 2025, and then it will taper off in the outer years as we move through the 10-year plan. Most of the funding up front is for Southside. Big takeaway for the 10-year plan is that 73%, roughly 3/4 of the $713 million planned for in the 10-year plan, 3/4 of that is for rehab and replacement of aging infrastructure. So that is to keep our system resilient and to keep our system effective for providing water and wastewater services. Growth in the orange accounts for about 14%. So that kind of gives you a sense of where the money is going. And then we did a similar spending plan for the 10-year plan on how will we spend the funding, how does that lay out over the 10-year plan. You see the total spending is $795 million. Yes, that is larger than what we asked for in the budget, $713 million, but that's because we always have projects ongoing. So projects that are ongoing now carry on for several more years, and that is incorporated in this spending plan. Also, maybe to note here is the darker blue lines at the bottom. That is the Southside expenditures. So you see in fiscal year 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29, how that money is being spent. The project is targeted to be completed by 2030. And then this is the same breakdown. And then the key takeaways is fiscal year 25, $328 million, with 60% of that for rehab and replacement of aging infrastructure. We're getting an $18 million grant from the state to extend water lines for PFAS contaminated wells. The county is making significant investments into the water and sewer system with funding of $35 million. It includes the construction funding for Southside, at least for a budgeted amount of $239, and we accounted for construction inflation. And then the 10-year plan, again, 3/4 of the $713 million is for rehab and replacement of aging infrastructure. And then for our schedule, we have done all the various committee meetings and workshops, and today we are seeking approval from the full board for the fiscal year 25 CIP as well as the 10-year plan.
Thanks, Carl. Any discussion?
Just a question. Excuse me. I saw where fiscal year 2025 cost of capital improvements was $126.6 million. And in the budget, we're budgeting $290 million. And when I was looking at this, I was going back over other data that had been presented to us to find out how we get to 290, and I couldn't figure, my little mind couldn't figure that out. So I just
Why the numbers, on your first question, the 328, which is budget for fiscal year '25, and the 120 something?
No, not the 328. If you look at the ordinance that's proposed, it's got 290, 450 versus 126.6.
So there's already been 35 million of the 239 that's been appropriated, plus another million and some change in capital reserves. The 35 was SRFs. We had the discussion, we thought it was important to show kind of the total cost, the construction piece at the 239 in the plan. However, about 36 million of that has already been appropriated. So we're only appropriating that delta in the actual ordinance. So that accounts for that difference.
So there's, how much, 36 going forward?
Is that, Julia, Ben?
Still
is that
doesn't
right?
add up to me.
35, there was 35 in the SRF and about a million, or was it 8 million? I can't remember the number. But that delta is due to what's already been appropriated for Southside.
The delta of the 126.6, or the slide before showed for fiscal year 125. I'm not talking about obligating funds, which I understand that's the 328. But I think if you added the 4 quarters, it comes up to $126.6 million. Money we're going to be actually spending in fiscal year 2025 for capital improvements. Yet, when you look at the budget ordinance, we have a total of $290,450. So I'm just a little confused.
It's the difference between spending and budgeting. We're budgeting the larger numbers, but that money actually gets spent at a slower pace. It takes multiple years to spend it, not just 1 year. That is the difference.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Move to adopt.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now we have a presentation on the Southside Water Treatment Plant upgrade and expansion site layout.
I'll go ahead and kick it off while Craig Wilson is coming up. In our CIP, we talk about Southside and 239 million, and it's kind of hard to visualize what that looks like. Our design team that Craig is managing has made a lot of good progress here in the last 8 months, and we have a very good concept of what the plant will look like at the River Road site. So I think in order to put more context around that large dollar amount, Craig's going to do a presentation on where we are on the project and what it actually will look like.
Thanks, Carl. So to kick it off, so Southside Wastewater Treatment Plant replacement and expansion project, we've hit some major milestones. The design build team had been able to develop the site for the 16 MGD facility. Not only that, but they've also looked at our build out 24 MGD, carved out some infrastructure to be able to host that. And then to make it even better, all that other area that's out there at Southside, we're actually looking at advanced treatment processes. So we're going to go through all those different types and share with the screen. So here, this is our existing treatment facility, Southside. As you can see in here, if you can see my mouse, this right here is our liquid train at Southside, which jumps to the outfall that's right here. And then up here is our solids handling train, which is basically carved up in this little area. So one of the things that we asked the design build team to do is see if we can figure out a way to make this a single phased approach. If we do a single phase approach, we cut down schedule, we cut down a tremendous amount of cost, and we don't impact our operations staff. So as you can see in the blue highlighted area, this is the area that we bought from the city of Wilmington over 10 years ago. It used to be known as the firing range, the city's firing range, as well as a dog training park. With this area, we put a goal to the team and said, can you put the new facility within that parameter? So what they do, they put it in that parameter. So what we've got is we've got the whole 16 MGD facility located in that little area of the forest, plus a little bit up here in the area that was just a dead area up at the very front of the plant. And I'll kind of go through this whole facility. So when you first drive in, you're going to come up to an administration building. This building is going to host our offices for our staff. It's going to have a nice control room for the operations so they can see the whole facility and how it's operating. And then you can kind of see this little area right above that. That's going to be our training room and conference room. This is going to be a very good way to train our staff, host conferences, as well as facilitate site visits. So if we have children that are coming in to learn about wastewater treatment plant or any other people that are taking a tour, you'll be able to do a really good area up there that's safe and away from the areas to view a tour. Right next to that facility, we've got a laboratory. This laboratory is designed to take samples for any part of the processes and then run a quick laboratory test on it to make sure that the health of the plant is up and running in the correct way. So switching gears over to the wastewater treatment facility. Up here in the far right corner, we're bringing in all the force mains together. We're going to manifold them into a single force main. Actually, it's going to be two, just because of the amount of flow. But we're going to run that force main, see if my mouse goes, down this road, around this corner, and into our PTF, which is our preliminary treatment facility, also known as a headworks. This facility will take out the grit and the rags before it heads to the rest of the facility. After our...
You said it was also known as what, somebody called it?
Headworks.
What?
Headworks.
Okay.
The one that we have right now is known as the Headworks. The one at Northside is also known as the Headworks. The new terminology is a PTF, or a preliminary treatment facility. And it's just a nicer word than the Headworks. At the Headworks, of course, we've got chemical injections there, and we also have a nice odor control facility. That odor control facility will not only do the Headworks and the PTF, but it'll also do the primary clarifiers and the secondary clarifiers. That's us being a really good neighbor and trying to get rid of some of that odor that we see right at the very head of the plant. From the PTF facility, we head straight to our clarifiers, our primary clarifiers. After our primary clarifiers, we then head over to our aeration basin. Our aeration basin then is accompanied with blowers and an electrical room. From the aeration basin, it then heads over to our secondary clarifiers. After it goes through our 3 secondary clarifiers, it'll head over to our disc filters, a tertiary filter system. From that tertiary filter system, it'll head over to our UV facility, and then our UV facility out to our outfall. So some of the things that I also like to note is this building right here, you might be familiar with, it's the new centralized maintenance building, the office building that we just got finished and completed. It's going to stay and remain. It's a very nice facility. It has good desk space, good workspace for the crew. And they also turned the existing chlorine contact building into a really cool workshop. So it was able to take an old brick structure and turn it into something that can actually last a long time. So that is the liquid side of the treatment facility. Then we move over to the solid side. So from these pump stations, the primary clarifier pump station and the secondary clarifier pump station, it will pump it up into the dewatering building where it will go through the gravity belt thickener. The gravity belt thickener will then send it over to our digesters. We have 3 digesters in this facility. Those digesters will then transfer with the associated digester buildings, will then send it back to the dewatering building to go through a belt filter press. Those belt filter presses will then either jump directly into the back of a semi-truck to be able to be hauled off to Sampson County, or it'll be able to drop directly into the sludge pad for storage. And that sludge pad is actually existing, but this gives us the ability to maybe dry it out a little bit more, or to, you know, for some reason it's raining and everything else, It doesn't mean that we have to just send truckers, we have the ability to accommodate them. Right across from that facility, we have a truck offloading. So when we go out there with our Vector trucks and we pick up from all the porta potties and everything else, they need a place to dump. And so what that is we carved out a space here for they to dump successfully, get all the liquids out, and then be able to haul those solids out successfully and easily. We're also going to have a septic receiving station similar to the one you see out at Northside that just sits right next to it. What those will is all the trucks that come up, they'll be able to directly dump into that receiving station, which then will go back to the head of the plant. And then up here at the very top, we have our digester building, our generator facility. This generator facility, of course, we wanted to locate it as far away from the river and protect us from any storms, as well as be able to have quick access if we need to get fuel. This is the 16 MGD facility layout, but it doesn't stop there. We wanted to say, okay, what do we need if we wanted to go to max build out? Max build out in this area is 24 MGD. So what they did is they came up with this plan. So you can see just a couple other structures to get us out to this 24 MGD. They have to add a new primary clarifier. They have to come down here and expand our tertiary filters, our disc filters. We have to add another channel for our UV facility. We have to expand our blower building to accommodate the aeration basin. So one additional channel will get us to 20 MGD. 2 more channels will then get us to 24. This last channel that is shown is actually advanced treatment to get rid of nutrient levels if we have to go through that. So if the state and the regulation says, okay, at the 16 MGD, we need to get rid of some nutrient levels and take care of that, we can actually build that single channel at any moment at the 16 MGD, the 20, or the 24. So we can add that on there in case our regulations change in the future, which is a great option to have. And then we have to add a secondary clarifier with this pumping station. And then, of course, up in the solid side, we have to add another digester building with its accommodating building. That would get us up to 24 MGD facility. The good news is we still have a lot of space over here. And so what are we going to do with that? We looked at a couple options, and one of those options is advanced treatment for PFAS removal as well as potable reuse. To kind of go through that process, so after you go through your wastewater treatment plant, you get to your disc filters, you filter the water. Instead of going to the UV, you then head up to an equalization tank, basically a holding tank. This holding tank would then sit here for a while and then head over to a flocculation and a sedimentation, very similar to how we have it at Sweeney Water Treatment Plant. So when you're trying to picture this, imagine dropping Sweeney Water Treatment Plant right in here. After the flocculation and sedimentation, we go to an ozone to treat it with the ozone. Then we go to a biological activated filters in this section. And then we drop it down into a granular activated carbon facility to get rid of the PFAS. And then once we're done with getting rid of the PFAS, we go to advanced oxidation and UV. From there, we can either go directly, direct path into the groundwater, or we go to another holding tank that then we can go to the distribution system. There's 2 options there for potable reuse. But this area is kind of carved out for advanced treatment. And we also have some advanced treatments on the solid side. So on the solid side, you can see this pad here, as well as this little guy here. This area is actually designated for digester gas utilization. So one of the items to here is we're looking at a renewed natural gas option, as well as cogen option, as well as utilizing the digester gas and other means, maybe into sludge drying, because right now we're having a lot of costs with hauling. So is there any ways we can utilize it for a thermal dryer to be able to lower that % water, and then it'll be a cheaper haul up to Sampson County. We also carved out a little section here in the sludge pad for PFAS destruction in case the future is required, or a thermal drying system. So we did have that forethought. If we have to do more of the moving towards that direction, we've got space allotted for it that will work within the facility with ease of migration. So that gets us to the whole 24 MGD facility plus the future options. So where does that lead us now? We are a GoRSA progressive design build project, and we are moving fast. Our preliminary design package, the 30% level, we are expecting that drawing set August of 2024. We are going to be shortly after that receiving that cost estimate. This will be a high-level cost of the 30%. That will be a real idea of what the project's total cost is going to be, or a ballpark. That will be in November of 2024. The one nice thing about design build, especially progressive design build, is we are able to expedite the schedule by having multiple contracts. So what we're going to do is we're going to break it out to these 3 contracts to help expedite the process. So we have is a early site work guaranteed maximum price that is going to be presented to us on November of 2024. This gives us the ability to go in and start removing some of those trees, getting some of the dirt moved around, getting it all settled, start digging on some of the large excavation, really start on some of the easy stuff on the site that usually takes a long time, get a step ahead. We also look at the long lead on the piping and the valves. We've been hearing it for the last 3 years, is when you order ductile iron pipe or PVC pipe, it's got almost a year delay. So what we're going to do is we want to see anything that's under our structure, any large diameter, any of the plastic pipes that are already in the industry that are long lead. Let's get it mortared. Let's get a package together, get it released, and that way when it comes on site, we're ready to go. That package is going to be delivered to us in December, this December of 2024. And then the other item that has been kind of crushing projects is the long lead equipment, GMP. So we have PLCs, generators, we have belt filter presses. These all pieces of equipment have extremely long lead items. So the last thing we want to do is get the building set up and squared up, and then we're waiting on electrical equipment. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up with a list of all the electrical equipment that we need and put it together as a GMP and release it early. So we're going to get that package on March of 2025. That'll give us a really good idea of all the unknowns that could hold us up or keep our project from moving forward. Get them out, get them started rolling. Then we move into our design package, the 75% design. With design build, that's pretty much 100% for us, because from there, everything's drawn out. Maybe missing a bollard here or the sidewalk here, but for the most part, it's a pretty much 100% drawing. That will be delivered next July on 2025. The final GMP proposal, the 75%, this will be the final guaranteed maximum price that we see and present to the board, will be September of 2025. And we plan on actually breaking ground for the plant construction, not just the site clearing, but breaking ground for the plant construction that following January 2026. And this still will get us on target to be completed prior to 2030, which is the ultimate goal for this project. Any questions on the layout? Yes, sir.
How much above sea level is
Great question.
that?
So we are very, very fortunate. All our structures that are listed in this area, every single one of them is outside the 500-year plan. Normally when we design a new pump station, we're at the 100-year plus 2 feet. Every single one of those is going to be outside the 500, which is fantastic for the site, for sustainability and reliability.
Okay, one more question. So say we get the perfect storm. What plan do we have that could protect that facility with as much money as we're putting into it to not take significant water damage? And do we have any kind of pumps that could pump the water out, replace it, put it someplace else, while we maintain the safety of the water that we're serving the people?
Yeah, so these little yellow things, they're the stormwater ponds. The stormwater ponds are actually designed to send everything to the headwards, but we do have an emergency overflow, so if we do get inundated, with water, they will go straight to the Cape Fear River. The structures that you see here are all concrete structures that won't flow. And what we're doing is any of the electrical equipment, we're not just putting them at the base floor. We're looking at it and evaluating and saying, okay, this is a PLC piece of equipment that's very critical. If it goes down, we lose this whole processing. Let's raise it up. Let's put a platform. And that way, if that water does go through that door and it fills up in that area, we're safe because we've got elevated platforms for our equipment. So we're looking at it, not only are we just past the 500 year, but we're looking at it, okay, what if we get a big rainstorm, it sheets in, what equipment cannot go down, and do we have redundancy? And those are all the things that we are looking at while we design this. Thank you.
John? To my knowledge, it's never been breached.
No, luckily, it's never been up and over the curb. Doesn't mean it won't, but we are gonna plan for the worst.
Present MGD, that plan is what? 16?
12 MGD right now. We're gonna go to 16. Now, there is an option to go to 20. You saw on a 20 MGD facility, it's very minor. We have one channel on this.
Right.
We don't need any more secondaries. We need one primary. We don't need another digester. And then we just need another channel for the UV. So there is some cost in there to go to 20. We don't know that cost yet, but we are asking the design builder to provide us that cost to see if it's a small increment change or if it's still outreached and can't touch.
But you wouldn't be starting from scratch.
Exactly.
Built in. Well, the question is, at the outfall, what is the quality of that water at the outfall?
The bottom of the river. This area right here is very low. It's flat. It's not the actual main channel of the Cape.
No, that wasn't my question. What is the quality of the water coming out?
Oh, as far as, our limits are a little bit more lenient than our north side limits. We do have some suspended solids, but with this new facility, we're gonna be at or exceed north side with the water quality. So once this plant is done, we'll be seeing less than 5 on the BOD. Suspended solids are gonna be really low.
Let me ask my question a different way. How is the water coming out of our plant finished compared to water intake at, say, Kings Bluff, quality-wise?
Intake?
Pardon?
Intake, you said at Kings?
There's
Let me take a shot at that. There's a reasonable argument that the water coming out of the wastewater treatment plant is better quality than what it's going into. That's a very reasonable argument, and that's by design.
That's what my point I'm driving at.
Yeah.
We spend, $300 million to not just liquid, because we have solids as well. And I don't know if the public needs to be educated, because I've been harping on this, and I didn't create it. It's the stuff I've heard from people where they've implemented this, is to take that water and send it back to Sweeney and then reuse it, not just for purple water, but to use it for our consumers. To me, it just seems like a no-brainer. We're spending all that money to dump it into the Cape Fear River, and nobody's going to use it. We're the bottom of the barrel at Wilmington.
Yeah.
And as you can see, we are planning for the potential of actually building a Sweeney there to turn it into potable water quality.
Good. Thank you.
I'd also like to take a moment to mention that we will launch today with the first of our public information campaign around this activity. And we'll be sure to send everybody a link to that commercial that we'll be running.
You remember the guy in San Diego, he was from Memphis or Louisville?
Yes.
They had 4 stations like this and not one single discharge permit, not one. That impressed me.
Any other questions? All right. We're going to move to Finance Committee. The regular meeting was May 1st. The minutes are in your package. Are we going to do monthly financials, John?
Yes, we are.
Oh, no.
Julie's there to
Julie.
take the reins.
Good
morning. I'm going to keep this brief, but as you know, last month we presented new financials to you. So I'm going to jump to the third slide. As we've been messaging the past couple months, as you can see, we are currently running a deficit as of March 31st, 2024. Compared to last year, you can see where we were running a surplus. So things are a little bit different this year. But we do have the possibility where we can catch up still. We still have April, May, and June to get through, to get to that $50 million mark, which is what we aim to do. If this doesn't happen, there is the possibility that we could always make up for it in FY25 with any surpluses we have then. Or in FY26, we could discuss it during budget development on how to correct it at that time. Are there any questions about that? And then just this next slide are the revenues through April 30, 2024. And I'll just leave it here. You can see we're still in the unfavorable compared to what we thought we would be compared to the budget. So this is what's driving that deficit. Were there any other questions about the financials?
Questions? Thank you. Ken, sorry?
I was going to note, our peak water use month is typically May. So that's why we're suggesting that we look at this picture from the standpoint of what are the revenues after May comes in, May and June. All right,
Right.
so we move the budget.
Yeah. The budget was moved to finance the FY 2025 budget adoption was moved. I guess given the discussion, should I make the motion?
Well, we give you an option, There's a policy debate, and we're going to have a conversation about some of that policy debate in closed session. But we give you an option to separate, we think, the policy driver in the budget and the rest of the budget. So there is approximately $67,000 dedicated to this strategic initiative for outside resources. As staff, we can tell you that we can redirect internal resources to continue that initiative if the board chooses to do so after evaluating it. So you could, if you so chose, approve the budget today with a $67,000 adjustment downward, releasing the rest of the budget, about 99.95%. And then as staff, we will bring back to you at your next meeting or a future meeting as you discuss in the closed session, the policy component and how those funds are spent or not. So or you may choose to defer this to the 23rd. What is your pleasure?
Could we defer till after the closed session? Defer acting till after the closed session?
Yeah, that's a third viable option.
We can do that. I mean, my intention was to defer to the 23rd when we had a full board here and discuss it. We didn't think it was fair to take this up with some members not here. So I think I would rather, however, this is for board discussion, I would make a motion that we just defer the whole vote and to the 23rd.
Did you just move that? If you did, I would second it.
I agree with that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now you need to make a motion to go into closed session.
I'd like to enter into.
We have no sustainability committee
sorry.
item.
Oh,
So, and no old business and any closing comments before closed session. So those are all before the closed session.
Okay. All right. So now we can make a motion to go into closed session.
I'd like to enter into closed session. I'd like to enter into closed session to discuss the matter of Davis versus CFPUA, CFPUA versus Camores et al., and personnel item.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.